My name is Victoria Lawson, and this is the story of how a single envelope handed to me on what should have been the happiest day of my life revealed a truth so devastating that it changed everything I thought I knew about the man I had just married. The wedding had been perfect. 6 months of meticulous planning had culminated in a ceremony at the Rosewood Gardens in Charleston, South Carolina, where magnolias bloomed in abundance and the scent of jasmine filled the warm spring air. I married Connor Mitchell, a real estate developer I had met 2 years earlier at a friend's dinner party. He was confident, successful, and had pursued me with a determination that made me feel desired in ways I had never experienced before. Connor came from old Southern money, the kind of family that had buildings named after them and seats on charity boards. His mother, Patricia Mitchell, was the epitome of Southern grace, always perfectly dressed, always saying the right thing, always maintaining that unshakable composure that came from generations of breeding and social position. From our first meeting, she had been welcoming but distant, treating me with polite courtesy that never quite warmed into genuine affection. I had attributed her coolness to the natural wariness of a mother protecting her son, or perhaps to the class difference between us. I came from a middle-class family in Ohio, my father a high school teacher and my mother a nurse. I had worked my way through college and built a modest career in marketing. To Patricia Mitchell, I was probably not the pedigreed socialite she had envisioned for her only son, but she had never been overtly unkind, so I had learned to accept her reserved manner. The ceremony itself was traditional and elegant, held in the garden's historic chapel with 200 guests in attendance. I wore my grandmother's pearls with my wedding dress, a gesture that my mother had insisted would bring me luck. Connor looked handsome in his tailored tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, his blue eyes bright with what I interpreted as joy as he watched me walk down the aisle on my father's arm. We exchanged vows that Connor had written himself, beautiful words about partnership and forever that made several people in the audience tear up. When he slid the ring onto my finger, his hand was steady, his smile confident. We kissed as husband and wife, and the chapel erupted in applause. Everything felt exactly as it should. I had no idea that in just a few hours, my entire world would shatter. The reception was held in the garden's grand pavilion, with crystal chandeliers and tables decorated with white roses and candles. We had our first dance to a jazz standard, and Connor held me close, whispering in my ear about how beautiful I looked, how happy he was, how he couldn't wait to start our life together. I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? This was my husband, the man who had gotten down on one knee 6 months ago and promised me forever. Dinner was served, speeches were made, and through it all, I felt like I was floating. My best friend Sarah gave a hilarious maid of honor speech about how Connor had better treat me right or answer to her. Connor's college roommate told embarrassing stories that made everyone laugh. Connor's father raised a toast to our future, his voice choked with emotion. Everything was perfect, exactly as I had dreamed it would be. It was during the cake cutting that Patricia approached me. The photographer had just finished taking pictures of Connor and me feeding each other bites of the elaborate 5-tier cake when I felt a hand on my arm. I turned to find Patricia standing there, impeccably dressed in a silver gown, her signature pearls around her neck, her expression unreadable. "Victoria, dear, could I have a moment?" she asked, her voice carrying that gentle southern lilt that could make even an insult sound like a compliment. "Of course, Patricia," I replied, smiling. Connor had been pulled away by some college friends, so I followed my new mother-in-law to a quiet corner of the pavilion, away from the crowd and the music. She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. My name was written across it in elegant script. "I want you to have this," she said, pressing it into my hands, "but promise me you won't open it until you're completely alone. Not tonight, perhaps tomorrow or the next day, but when you have privacy and time to process what's inside." I looked down at the envelope, then back up at her face. For the first time since I had known her, Patricia's composure seemed to crack slightly. Her eyes were glistening, and her mouth was pressed into a thin line. "Patricia, you're scaring me," I said, my heart beginning to race. "What is this?" "I'm sorry, Victoria, I'm so sorry. But you need to know the truth, and I can't be the one to say it out loud. Not here, not now. Just promise me you'll read it when you're alone, and that you'll do what you need to do with the information." She squeezed my hand once, her grip surprisingly strong, and then she walked away, disappearing back into the crowd of guests before I could ask any more questions. I stood there, holding the envelope, my mind racing with possibilities. What could possibly be in here that was so important yet so terrible that she couldn't just tell me? Why give it to me on my wedding day? Why not before or after or never? I slipped the envelope into my small clutch, trying to push the interaction out of my mind so I could enjoy the rest of my reception. But it sat there like a weight, making my purse feel heavier than it should, making every moment of celebration feel slightly off. Connor found me a few minutes later, wrapping his arms around me from behind and kissing my neck. "There's my beautiful wife," he said, and the words still gave me a thrill. Wife. I was someone's wife, his wife. What were you and my mother talking about? He asked casually, but I noticed a slight tension in his voice. "Oh, she just wanted to give me a card," I lied, not entirely sure why I was lying. That was sweet of her. Connor's arms tightened around me briefly, then relaxed. "She likes you more than you think," he said. "She's just not great at showing it. That whole stiff upper lip thing, you know how she is." I nodded, not trusting my voice. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. We danced, we mingled with guests, we posed for what felt like 1,000 photographs. Every time I saw Patricia, she was the picture of gracious hostess, chatting with guests, laughing at jokes, giving no indication that she had just handed me what felt increasingly like a bomb disguised as a card. We left the reception around 11, heading to a luxury hotel in downtown Charleston, where we would spend our wedding night before flying to Italy the next evening for our 2-week honeymoon. In the car, Connor was giddy, talking about the wedding, about how well everything had gone, about how his business partners had been impressed with the venue and the guest list. Everything with Connor was always about appearances, about networking, about maintaining the right image. I had noticed it during our relationship, but had convinced myself it was just ambition, just the reality of running a successful business in a competitive market. At the hotel, we went up to our suite, a beautiful room with a view of the harbor. Connor immediately started undressing, talking about how exhausted he was, suggesting we skip the champagne he had ordered and just go to bed. I agreed, suddenly feeling drained myself, the weight of the envelope in my purse making it hard to focus on anything else. We got ready for bed in a comfortable silence that came from 2 years of familiarity, and within minutes of his head hitting the pillow, Connor was asleep, his breathing deep and even. I lay there in the darkness, listening to him sleep, feeling the envelope burning a hole in my purse across the room. Patricia had said to wait until I was alone, to wait until I had time to process, but I couldn't wait. The curiosity and growing dread were eating me alive. I slipped out of bed quietly, grabbed my purse, and went into the bathroom, closing the door softly behind me. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, my hands shaking as I pulled out the envelope. For a long moment, I just stared at it. Once I opened this, I couldn't unknow whatever was inside. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe Patricia was being dramatic about some family tradition or piece of advice. Maybe I was working myself up for no reason. But even as I tried to convince myself of these possibilities, I knew deep down that whatever was in this envelope was going to change everything. I opened it carefully, pulling out several pages of what appeared to be printed documents and a handwritten letter on Patricia's personal stationery. I started with the letter, my eyes struggling to focus on the elegant cursive in the dim bathroom light. "My dear Victoria, I am writing this with a heavy heart and a burden of guilt that has grown unbearable. What I am about to tell you, I should have told you months ago, before you planned a wedding, before you fell deeper in love with my son. But I am a coward, and I hoped until the very last moment that Connor would find the courage to tell you himself. Since he has not, and since you are now legally bound to him, I can no longer stay silent. My son is not who you think he is." My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the letter. I forced myself to keep reading, each word feeling like a knife to my chest. For the past 5 years, Connor has been living a double life. He is married, Victoria. Not to you, you are his second wife, though you didn't know the first one existed. Her name is Rebecca Cole, and they wed in a small ceremony in Atlanta 5 years ago. They have a 3-year-old daughter named Emma. Rebecca believes Connor travels for business 3 weeks out of every month. You believe he is home with you those same 3 weeks. The truth is, he splits his time between 2 families, 2 homes, 2 completely separate lives. The bathroom started spinning. I read the words again, certain I must have misunderstood, but the meaning remained the same. Connor was already married. Connor had a child. Connor had been living with another woman, raising a family with her, while simultaneously building a relationship with me. It was impossible. It had to be impossible. But Patricia's letter continued, providing details that left no room for doubt. She included dates, addresses, photographs. I looked at the other documents she had included. A marriage certificate from Georgia showing Connor Mitchell and Rebecca Cole married 5 years ago. Birth certificate for Emma Rose Mitchell. Photographs of Connor with a beautiful blonde woman and a little girl who had his same blue eyes and dimpled smile. In the photos, they looked like a perfect family, happy and complete. My stomach lurched, and I barely made it to the toilet before I vomited, my body rejecting the truth along with my wedding dinner. I sat on the cold tile floor, tears streaming down my face, Patricia's letter crumpled in my hand. How was this possible? How had I not known? How had no one told me? I forced myself to read the rest of the letter, though every word was agony. Patricia explained that she had only discovered the truth herself 6 months ago, right around the time Connor had proposed to me. She had confronted him, begged him to end it with me before it went too far, but Connor had refused. He claimed he loved us both, that he could make it work, that I would never find out. When Patricia threatened to tell me herself, Connor had cut her off completely, refusing to let her see her granddaughter, threatening to disappear with both families if she interfered. I told myself I was protecting Emma by staying silent, Patricia wrote. I told myself that perhaps Connor would come to his senses and end things with you before the wedding. But he didn't, and now here we are. I cannot in good conscience let you enter into this marriage without knowing the truth. What you do with this information is up to you. But you deserve to know who you really married. I am so terribly sorry, Victoria. You deserved so much better than this. You deserved the truth. Please forgive me for not being brave enough to give it to you sooner. I don't know how long I sat on that bathroom floor. It could have been minutes or hours. Time seemed to have stopped meaning anything. Eventually, I heard Connor stirring in the bedroom, calling out my name sleepily. I quickly wiped my face, shoved the documents back into the envelope, and flushed the toilet to give myself a reason for being in the bathroom so long. You okay? Connor asked when I emerged, his voice heavy with sleep. I looked at him in the dim light filtering through the curtains, this man I thought I knew, this man I had just married, and I felt nothing but a cold, empty fury. Fine, I managed to say. Just wedding day jitters catching up with me, go back to sleep. He did, almost immediately, secure in his lies, comfortable in his deception. I got back into bed but didn't sleep. I lay there in the darkness, running through our entire relationship in my mind, seeing now all the signs I had missed. The way he was always vague about his business travel. The fact that he had 2 cell phones, claiming one was for work. The way he never wanted to do holidays with my family, always insisting we needed to keep them private, just the 2 of us. The fact that he had insisted on a long engagement, kept finding reasons to push back the wedding date, until finally I had put my foot down and set a firm date, and suddenly he had stopped arguing. It all made sense now, in the most horrible way possible. Connor wasn't the successful, devoted partner I thought he was. He was a con artist, a bigamist, a man so narcissistic or sociopathic that he thought he could maintain 2 marriages, 2 families, 2 completely separate lives indefinitely. And he would have continued to do so if Patricia hadn't intervened. As dawn broke over Charleston Harbor, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Connor immediately. I wasn't going to scream or cry or give him any warning that I knew. I was going to be strategic, careful, and I was going to make sure that when this all came crashing down, I wasn't the one left in ruins. I got up quietly, retrieved the envelope from my purse, and took photos of every document on my phone. Then I sent them to myself via email, uploaded them to a cloud storage account, and texted the whole package to Sarah with a message. Don't open until I tell you to, but if anything happens to me or these documents, make them public. When Connor woke up a few hours later, I was showered, dressed, and had ordered room service breakfast. "Good morning, husband," I said, the word tasting like poison in my mouth. He grinned, pulled me into a kiss, and told me how much he loved me, how perfect yesterday had been, how excited he was for Italy. I smiled and nodded and played the role of the happy newlywed bride, while inside I was already planning my escape. We went to the airport that afternoon, flew to Rome, and began what was supposed to be a romantic honeymoon. For 2 weeks, I played my part perfectly. I smiled for photos, I held his hand walking through ancient ruins, I made love to him in our beautiful hotel rooms, all while gathering more evidence, documenting everything and planning my next move. Connor suspected nothing. Why would he? In his mind, he had pulled off the perfect crime, married his mistress while maintaining his first family, and would continue his double life indefinitely. On our last night in Italy, at a romantic dinner overlooking the Amalfi Coast, Connor raised his glass of wine and toasted to our future, to the many years we would spend together, to the family we would build. I raised my glass, clinked it against his, and thought about Rebecca and Emma, the real family he already had, the wife and daughter he had betrayed just as thoroughly as he had betrayed me. When we returned to Charleston, I told Connor I needed a few days at my apartment to pack up my things before officially moving into his house. He agreed readily, probably thrilled to have a few days to check in with his other family without having to make excuses. The moment he left, I called Sarah and told her to open the files I had sent. Then I called a divorce lawyer, the best one in Charleston, and made an appointment for the next morning. Attorney Margaret Ross looked at the documents I brought her, listened to my story, and smiled grimly. "Bigamy is a felony in South Carolina," she said. "And while your marriage to him is void because he was already married, we can still go after him for fraud, for any financial damages you incurred planning a wedding to a married man. This is going to get very ugly for him." "Good," I said, and I meant it. The next step was harder. I had to contact Rebecca. I agonized over how to do it, finally deciding that she deserved to hear the truth directly from me, woman to woman, both of us victims of the same man's lies. I found her on social media easily enough. Connor had been careless in his deception, never imagining that his two worlds would collide. I sent her a private message with copies of all the documents, including our marriage certificate, photos from our wedding, and a simple note. "I had no idea he was married. I'm so sorry. We both deserve better than this." Rebecca called me within an hour, and we had the most surreal conversation of my life. She confirmed everything Patricia had told me. Connor had been living with her in Atlanta, coming home like a normal husband and father, while simultaneously maintaining his relationship with me. She was devastated, furious, and grateful all at once. We agreed to work together to make sure Connor faced consequences for what he had done. The confrontation happened a week later, carefully orchestrated. I invited Connor to my apartment under the pretense of having a romantic dinner before I officially moved in with him. When he arrived, he found not just me, but Rebecca, Patricia, my lawyer, and 2 police officers waiting for him. The look on his face when he walked in and saw all of us together was almost worth the pain he had caused. Almost. Connor tried to lie his way out of it at first, but when faced with the evidence, the documents, the photos, the testimony from both his wives and his own mother, he finally broke down. He didn't apologize. He didn't show remorse. He just kept saying he had never meant to hurt anyone, that he loved us both, that he thought he could make it work. As if love was an excuse for bigamy and fraud. He was arrested that night. The case made headlines in Charleston and Atlanta. Real estate developer arrested for bigamy, leading double life for years. Connor's business partners dropped him immediately, his reputation in ruins. Rebecca filed for divorce and full custody of Emma. I had my marriage annulled and filed a civil suit for fraud and emotional distress. Patricia reached out to me several times in the months that followed, apologizing repeatedly for not telling me sooner, asking if I could ever forgive her. The truth was, I understood why she had done what she did. She was a mother trying to protect her son, her granddaughter, trying to hold her family together even as it fell apart. She had finally done the right thing, even though it was late. I couldn't quite forgive her, but I didn't hate her either. The legal proceedings took almost a year. Connor was convicted of bigamy and sentenced to 3 years in prison, though he only served 18 months. Rebecca and I both won our civil suits, though the money felt hollow compared to the time and emotion we had lost. But at least there was accountability, at least there were consequences, at least he didn't get to walk away unscathed. Rebuilding my life after that was slow and painful. I moved back to Ohio for a while, staying with my parents, taking time to heal and figure out who I was outside of Connor's lies. I went to therapy, processed the trauma, learned to trust my instincts again. Eventually, I moved to Boston, started over in a new city with a new marketing job, surrounded myself with good people who had no connection to my past. I didn't date for almost 2 years. The idea of trusting someone again, of being vulnerable, of believing in love felt impossible after what Connor had done. But gradually, with the help of therapy and the support of friends, I started to heal. I learned that Connor's actions said everything about him and nothing about me, that I hadn't been stupid or blind. I had just been trusting, and trust isn't a weakness. When I finally did start dating again, I was different. More cautious, yes, but also more confident. I knew what I would and wouldn't accept, and I had no patience for red flags or excuses. I dated casually for a while, not looking for anything serious, just learning how to open my heart again in small, manageable ways. Then I met Andrew at a charity event in Boston. He was a pediatric surgeon, kind and funny and refreshingly straightforward. When he asked me out, I almost said no, the old fear rising up like a wave. But I pushed through it, said yes, and we went to dinner. I told him on that first date about my past, about Connor, about the bigamy and the betrayal. I needed to know up front if he could handle my baggage, if he would run at the first sign of my damaged trust. Andrew didn't run. He listened, he empathized, and he told me about his own heartbreak, his own journey to healing. We took things slowly, building a foundation of honesty and communication that I had never had with Connor. Andrew was patient with my trust issues, understanding when I needed space, consistent in proving that he was who he said he was. We've been together for 3 years now, living together for one, and talking about marriage in a way that doesn't make me break out in hives anymore. I'm not the same woman I was when I married Connor. I'm more careful, more guarded, but also stronger, more sure of my own worth. I know now that I don't need a man to complete me, that I'm whole on my own, and any partner I choose is a complement to my life, not the foundation of it. I still have the envelope Patricia gave me, stored in a box with all the other documents from that period of my life. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, reminding myself of the warning signs I missed, the truth I should have seen. But mostly I just let it gather dust, a relic of a past I've moved beyond. Rebecca and I stay in touch occasionally, bonded by our shared experience in a way that's both comforting and painful. She's remarried now, to a man who treats her and Emma with the respect and honesty they deserve. Emma is 7 now and doesn't remember Connor much, which Rebecca says is probably for the best. Connor got out of prison and moved to Texas, starting over in yet another city with yet another identity. I don't know if he's learned anything, if he regrets what he did, if he's capable of being honest with anyone. I don't really care. He's not my problem anymore. Sometimes people ask me if I regret marrying Connor, if I wish I had somehow known before the wedding, if I'm angry at Patricia for waiting until after to tell me. The truth is complicated. Yes, I wish I had known sooner. Yes, I wish Patricia had been braver and told me before I walked down that aisle. But I also know that I probably wouldn't have believed her if she had told me directly. I was too in love, too invested in the dream to see the truth. The envelope, the documents, the undeniable evidence, that was what I needed to break through my denial. My advice to anyone planning a wedding, building a life with someone, trusting someone with their heart: trust, but verify. Listen to your instincts when something feels off. Don't ignore red flags because you're invested in the dream. And if someone hands you an envelope with a warning, don't wait to open it. The truth may hurt, but it's always better than living a lie. Today, as I write this from my apartment in Boston, I can hear Andrew in the kitchen making dinner, singing off-key to music only he can hear. This is what real love feels like: comfortable, honest, safe. No hidden phones, no mysterious business trips, no secrets that could destroy everything. Just 2 people choosing each other every day, building a life on a foundation of truth. Connor's envelope changed my life, but not in the way he destroyed it. It saved me from years, maybe decades, of lies. It gave me the evidence I needed to escape, and the strength I didn't know I had. And while I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone, I'm grateful for who it helped me become: a woman who knows her worth, who demands honesty, who will never again settle for less than she deserves. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If this story resonated with you, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.